All right.
Because that's what we do. Yeah, because it's fun. Okay, so right now, trying to get Chuck into this. And then, I know what I'm doing wrong. Stupid internets. So right now, trying to get Chuck in, then Mark should be jumping in. We have Steve. It's already been There's already been a comment that this is going to be a spicy one. I sure hope so.
Spicy. Ooh.
Spicy. Now it worked. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. So hopefully, because my background has sparse firearms, we're not going to get as many strikes. I just need to come back.
Yeah, you pulled some off of your wall there, so that's going to help things out, right?
That's the hopes. Yeah. That's the hopes. Had a firearms day. Was it last week? Maybe it was this week. I don't know. It was last week. And I pulled a bunch that could be carry guns or backup guns. And we had a somewhat new shooter with us that I thought, okay, I'm going to select some stuff that might be a good choice for someone new to firearms. And I did. And they're still in gun bags, and they need to be put back in their place. So welcome to ModCast. Right now, it's just Steve and I. We're going to be joined by a couple others. There might even be more than a couple that join us. We'll see. The episode number is 438. The date is August 16th, 2025. We're going to talk about a couple things that might be spicy. Sacred cows make the best steaks. Yes. I don't know how we got on the topic, but it was basically the idea that most YouTube ballistics videos, either it's straight up misinformation, they're using groceries, they're focusing on the wrong aspects of the testing, or it's an ad. You might have a popular YouTuber that makes these videos of these ballistic tests, and they come to conclusions that are not aligned with what we should be looking at in ballistic testing. Oh, look how much that gel, the block of gel jumped. That's a material. That doesn't really mean anything. We're not measuring that. So that's going to be the big gist. And I'm sure we're going to go off into different areas, different segments of it. Before we get into that, we do have Steve here. I don't know if you guys... question for the two of us. Steve, are you going to Revolver Roundup in South Carolina? I will not.
Oh,
Steve will.
Not South Carolina.
Not there. He will not be going there.
Not South Carolina, but I will be at Revolver Roundup down in Arizona, the Pat Rogers Memorial at Gunsight. In
one of these days, I'd like to go. And if anything, it's to hang out with friends, because it's just a good time to be around people.
My dad used to say, when someone used to say one of these days, you'd go to the calendar going Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. No, I don't see one of these days on here. So pick one. So just pick one.
Just go. Just do it. Just do it.
I've been asked to go to South Carolina, but that's quite a jaunt for me to go out there.
Yeah. You can't just take the private jet?
And I don't. Well, I don't have my. I guess now you have to have your either have to have a passport or enhanced driver's license or something to be able to fly now. And I have neither.
Did you just go mute, or did my ears just turn off? Chuck, can you hear him?
I can't hear him either.
Okay. And that was the punchline to a great joke. We just all missed it. And I think Mark got lost on the way. So Steve, it doesn't show that you are muted, but maybe something happened with your mic. The battery died. Because what I was hoping to do is, and he died. Steve died. I was hoping to talk about some of his ammo. Are you going to be going to a revolver roundup in South Carolina?
The Revolver Fest, yes.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm one of the presenters.
Cool. So for someone who is not quite the revolver aficionado and they're just getting their feet wet in it, in your opinion, is it still worth going to?
I think so. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think so. I think like we're gonna start out the day with a big round robin of all the instructors running through basic revolver, like trigger manipulation, things like that, how to run double action guns, that sort of thing. So the whole thing will start out with some grip sight trigger, and then a variety of classes on like carry modes and reloading, how to use loaders, how to use strips, things like that.
Yeah. Have you used the Zetas much?
Not really. I just don't like them that much. I know people that do like them. I've used them enough to give them a fair chance to know that they don't really work for me. I do keep them in my bag of show and tell of stuff that I show other people.
Yeah.
So that, I can hand them out in class. People can try them if they want to, things like that.
I like the staggered. The straight line though worked just fine for me. But yeah, the staggered kind of a cool idea. I also have it almost looks like a magazine, but it's specifically made for reloading revolvers.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Somebody took the idea of people used to take the 38 Special magazine for like the Colt. It was a 38 wad cutter gun. And then Smith & Wesson had one as well. I've seen people use magazines and thumb. I've reloaded 9mm revolvers with Glock magazines.
I believe it.
Off the same principle.
Yeah. I messed with one of those. I haven't, by no means have I tested it. I just wanted to see it in person. Interesting concept. It does take up a lot more space than my traditional little that or my. I'm sure I have another speed strip somewhere on this table.
Yeah.
But yeah. But it's nice though that people are trying new things, trying new ideas and trying to get things to work, have an idea and create something. That's how we get the cool stuff. And it's not everything's going to be, what do you call it? Oh, Steve is back. Not everything's going to be prize winning.
Yes.
Yeah. Steve, are you here?
Am I back?
Hey, you're here. You live.
I don't.
It's a
Electronics
Christmas
is not my thing. Ride horse, get paycheck. I have no idea about this stuff. I'm in awe of you because of all that stuff you do in the background. You have this ModCast going, and I see you turn to your right there and type stuff and all this multitasking going on. And me, it's like ride horse, get paycheck, man. I don't know.
Yep. So, for those of you watching and you're not familiar with Steve or High Desert Cartridge, you've been getting a lot of attention, from people I consider to be the good guys, friends, just some really good publicity, and in my opinion, it's earned. I got boxes of your stuff all over this place, and it's cool to see how things progress. Now you have a new 38 round that has just come out. Tell me about it.
Sure. 140 grain short barrel. I'm trying to think who's involved in that. I'm sure Chuck was. I think Chuck and I talked about, along with several other people, because you can't find the short barrel gold dot anymore. And so what can we do to do something to, you're not going to replicate a gold dot, but something that'll work. That's like the gold dot. Am I still there? Did I lose me again?
Oh, no, you're here.
Because my screen blinked. So
gotcha.
So Chuck was looking at the 140 grain, and then I ran into Bruce Cartwright at Revolver Roundup last year, the retired FBI guy. And he asked me if I would look into reviving an older FBI round. I think they still offer it. I looked on the net. They have something, but I don't know if it's the same. Obviously, probably not the same one from the 90s. But the FBI issued a 145 grain, I think, silver tip, back in the early 90s. And it was by request only, had to be approved by, not everybody could carry the thing, I guess. That was what I read about, according to Bruce. Anyway, getting back to short barrel. So short barrel isn't there anymore. I don't think there's a short barrel cartridge on the market right now. Is there, Chuck? For a 38?
So technically, yes. I mean, people that like if you look at the critical defense that Hornady makes,
okay,
and the Spear Gold Dot, the 135 grain, I think they quit calling it the short barrel. Maybe they got it in different boxes. Yeah, I got a buddy on NYPD that they have 50 round boxes and it just says Gold Dot, but I know it's been marketed as short barrel. Their short barrel line does have some loads that are loaded specifically for short barrel guns. My information is that the 9mm short barrel is just the standard 124 grain plus P Gold Dot in a different box because it works so well out of a short barrel. The 135 grain Gold Dot plus P was optimized for snub nose revolvers. And that was developed at request to NYPD. It just happens to also to be an excellent 3 and 4 inch barrel gun, carry load or defense load. But as far as not with a specific name, but there's been a ton of attempts at short barrel 38 snub loads. Remember 125 grain Federal Nyclad was the chief special load is what that got marketed as. That was developed specifically for snub nose revolvers. Problem with it was it had this mythical legendary status when they quit making it and the people that were hoarding it. It was a horrible performer. I mean, it was just really a poor performer. It didn't tend to mushroom through heavy clothing, and when it did mushroom, it would stop dramatically short, like
shallow.
Let's say 6 or 7 inches of penetration, which is horrible. So there's been a lot of attempts at things like that tend to do rather poorly, actually.
I think the Gold Dot short barrel, I'm not sure. Like I said, I don't know what it's packaged as, but I keep hearing on the different forums and the internet pages what defensive revolvers and different whatever revolving cylinder and like whatever discussion about that short barrel Gold Dots is almost it's unattainable. It's not around, or they made a short run of it here. I heard recently. I haven't seen any, but a very short
someone
amount.
Just commented.
Small amount.
SG Ammo has it currently for 50 round boxes for the 135 Gold Dot short barrel 38, 64 cents per round, 60 cents if you buy a case. Get it while it's hot. This episode brought to you by.
It tends to sell out very quickly. The 357 even faster because they don't make much of it. Part of the problem with ammo, which I mean, I know Steve knows, but most people don't know. It's kind of like grandma making cookies for Christmas. They will make runs of ammo in batches. So they'll make a batch and then they will set up for something else. So when they have a batch show up, especially something popular like this, everybody grabs it and it sells out. And then you might have to wait till next year if you want to buy some.
So anyways, I tried to make a short barrel. I ran it at, I think Chuck, you just tested it. I ran it at the same velocity as the 135 grain plus P, which runs about 860 out of a snub. I ran mine about 860, 870, and I just the last batch that I just got off of the machine here last week, because Chuck and I talked after he tested some stuff. I might want to poop it up a little bit, and I did poop it up a little bit. It's still under plus P. The powder I use isn't pushing the pressure, so for pressure wise, we're still under plus P, but I'm still getting the velocity out of it. And so I ran it about, I think it's running about 880 now, 885.
Is that your 140 grain?
Yeah, it's a 140 grain short barrel 38.
I haven't had a chance to try it yet. I ran it. Tried it.
Yeah. You should have the new batch, Mark. Actually,
I do. I have the new batch. It came one day after I went to the range and tested.
That's the way it works.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be a little bit more hotter than the original load, because we wanted the Chuck can elaborate on his testing, but I think we got the penetration. We want a little bit more expansion out of it because we're running XTP, and they're kind of a little tougher bullet to get to do what we need them to do. Their power band is definitely in the 900s, although we can get it to expand, and it definitely does a good plow job through the wound channel, that's for sure. But XTPs will never be. What's that?
I say 900 with that bullet on an air weight would be a little spicy, a lot spicy.
Yeah, I'm trying not to get it too spicy because I'm trying it through a 642, and it's kind of getting to be unpleasant, and so it's tough to get the XTP to do what it does. It's not going to look like an HST, a nice flower. It never will, not until you hit it about 1300, and you start getting it finally to really mushroom out. But then it becomes unpleasant to shoot. But the penetration is amazingly consistent. I can get it, the 32s are down in the upper 800s, and the consistency with 16 to 20 inches it seems like it's just always there, whether I run it through clear gel or FBI ballistic stuff. It's there. Obviously, right. The mushroom is different between the two gels, and Chuck can elaborate on that because he just did a test on that between the two gels. And but what I like about the XTP is it if you get it in its power band, the penetration's always going to be there. Even if you run it through 4 layers of denim, may not open up, but then it acts pretty much just like a wad cutter, and it'll just plow through. But you'll get a little more penetration, but it won't over penetrate. And that's what I like about it. It will blow the first block, and stop in the second block almost every time.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what I consistently see. Testing that load, Steve's DB load, the 357 low recoil load, several others, you will see that consistent band of penetration, even when you get a failure to expand, which I'll say is also similar to that gold dot load. When I have had that fail to expand, it's still because it has such a wide meplat and it tends to yaw that, again, some of what people look at as a bullet failure often isn't when you look at the parameters that we are trying to get as
what a bullet does.
Sufficient penetration and things like that.
Why don't we talk about that? Because we have talked about it, and we've talked about it, and we've talked about it. But I want this episode to reinforce these good concepts. And this can be another thing, another reference. Someone can go, hey, watch this. And then they might learn something, because this episode is talking about YouTube ballistics, misinformation, or ads, because there's so much misinformation. So we have 4 professionals. I was going to say 3, but I'm going to include myself because I should. But no, outstanding panel to discuss this. What are we looking for in defensive ammunition?
Before we start on that, you were mentioning about short barrel loads. And I don't know if you guys mentioned it because I was in late. I'm still a big fan of the Georgia Arms Ultimate Defense Wad Cutter, because it had a good compromise between, no matter how much cylinder gap you've got, it gets good penetration. It will get a little bit of expansion. The bullet will actually expand because of that zero soft lead bullet, and that's a decent load. For me, it's a little spicy in the air weights with my small stocks. but their PPC load gets similar performance at about 45 feet per second less, and it's much easier to control. It's right around 700 versus 750.
Well, and one of the factors I want to ultimately discuss also is the misunderstanding of velocity, that while these great, amazing velocities translate to something tangible, it's not necessarily the case.
No.
So I'm going to sit back and just enjoy you guys lecturing. So yeah, what are those parameters? What should people be looking for in their defensive ammunition?
Chuck, you want to start?
Yeah. I tell people that, well, to start out, the three most important criteria, or two most important criteria, is the bullet has to go bang every time. Has to go bang every time. It has to hit to your sights accurately, and it has to deliver sufficient penetration to get the job done. After that, when you have all of those well satisfied, then I start worrying about nuances of wound ballistics. One of the things that somebody is going to misread this on the internet. I am not advocating people carry ball ammo. I know there's some smooth brains lately that have done that loudly on the internet, and there's a lot of reasons why you don't want to default to ball ammo in defensive calibers nowadays. One is most of it is bulk pack ammo, and it is not built to be high quality. It does not have the quality control. The big ammo factories don't do the quality control procedures on that ammo that they do on their premium duty ammo. So you're settling for lesser quality ammo. It's just a bad idea. But Socratic question I hit people with when I'm talking about this in class is, how many people killed by small arms fire in World War II were shot with jacketed hollow point bullets? And probably none, but we can't say for sure because Charles Askins was involved, and he would do things like hand load ammo and then go test it on bad guys. So there's a possibility there was a few. He wrote about shooting a Nazi soldier through his ruck with a hand-loaded 38 that he was carrying at the time. So, there could have been a jagged hollow point or two involved in World War II. But I kind of make the point in that it's not that the ammo doesn't work. It's just we are trying to fine-tune the nuances of this to do the job at best possible case. A lot of people worry about expansion. They worry about things like over-penetration, and they want a really pretty bullet that comes out of these ads, or they want dramatic stuff. They're looking for magic beans. Like the RIP ammo is a classic case of just packaged bullshit designed to take people's money from them. It gives the opposite of what we want from ballistic performance. So when I talk about ammo has to go bang every time, has to hit accurately to your sights, has to penetrate deep enough to get the job done, what am I talking about there? Big believer in the FBI criteria is being valid. They go with a minimum of 12 inches, and they want the bullet to expand about 1.5 times its caliber. And so when you're looking at, say, a 9mm or something, that diameter, you're looking at bullets that expand above 55 caliber, typically in like 60 caliber range. So they got a wider crush cavity. They top out their criteria at 18 inches. They wanted the bullet to penetrate between 12 and 18 inches in FBI calibrated wound ballistics gel. A lot of people poo-poo that. I've never been attacked by a gel block. Anybody that just makes disparaging comments about ballistic gel as developed by the Army Wound Ballistics Lab at the Presidio when it was headed by Dr. Fackler, doesn't know what they're talking about. They shot a lot of anesthetized goats and pigs. Dr. Fackler was a very experienced combat surgeon in Vietnam, saw lots of bullet holes in lots of people, had access to Army wound ballistics studies going back to World War I. There was a massive study that came out of World War II after the end of the war on wound ballistics, and that Army wound ballistics laboratory and that study went long past through the Vietnam War into modern times. So they compare shooting anesthetized pigs, anesthetized goats. They look at autopsies. They look at combat surgery reports. And to validate, they didn't just invent ballistic gelatin and start shooting into the lab. And anybody who thinks that has absolutely no idea what they're talking about. It is one of the most proven methodologies for ballistic testing. It's completely valid, and it mimics muscle tissue to a T as far as penetration expansion characteristics. So all that said, personally, from my observation on the street, things I like to see, I actually default to more penetration than less.
Yep.
A lot of people will see a bullet go over 18 inches and call it over penetration. I think that's a little out of touch with reality. My job, when we got into 9mm, we eventually settled on the 124 plus P gold dot 9mm. And some of the commanders, when we first got that, we were shooting through people pretty good. The Spear, to their credit, redesigned the bullet for a little more expansion, a little less penetration, and we were getting optimal performance out of it. And that's the exact same bullet that's existed since the 90s. My old job's still using it. Almost everybody we shot, the bullet went all the way through, popped out the other side, with typically the clothing parachute out, and then the bullet would dribble out on the ground. So because the bullet exited, people would think over penetration, where we would just find it laying on the ground within feet of the guy that got shot. That's not over penetration. That is a bullet that fully penetrated. Most people don't know that skin on exit gives a big effect of degrading penetration. It is equal to penetrating something like 4 to 5 inches of muscle tissue trying to exit skin, because the skin will balloon out and then pop back. So it's super common in surgery at autopsies to pull bullets out from under the skin on the far side of the wound track. But from my observation, having seen a lot of cases where bullets stop short, fail to do the job, could have done the job. One of the most famous examples is that 115 grain Winchester silver tip that was blamed for some of the problems at the FBI Miami gunfight in 1986. Insufficient penetration. If it had more penetration, it would have went through Platt's heart and shut him down a lot faster, and they probably wouldn't have had 7 FBI agents shot during the course of that fight. So what I've seen from hunting, what I've seen on the street, I prefer more penetration than less. So when I have bullets, like when we were talking about the XTP penetrating 18, 20, 22 inches of ballistic gel when we've been testing it, I'm completely comfortable with that. And I mean completely comfortable. I think that's a good optimal top and range from my observation. I prefer it to get more than 12 inches. I'm comfortable with more like my minimum being like 15 to 16, but that's what I've seen. So those are the parameters that I'm looking for. After we achieve reliability, hitting accurately to the sights, and then sufficient penetration, and we have the horsepower to do it, because there's a lot of guns people carry, like 32s and 380s, that don't necessarily have the horsepower to do it. Or if you want lower recoil, and that's, Mark and I are both advocates of really lightweight 38 revolvers loaded with wad cutters, because wad cutters give very consistent crush cavities and really good performance without expansion. But when we have the horsepower, like say, 9mm or 40 caliber service pistols, then we want to have a good expanding bullet, because if we don't, we do get into that over penetration where you could in theory shoot through 2 or 3 people in a row, even if you hit your bad guy. So a big plus for bullet expansion is that mushroom works like a parachute on a dragster. If the dragster's at the end of the drag strip and the parachute doesn't pop, what's going to happen? Dragsters through the fence, over the hay bales, into the cornfield, right? That's a mess. We want to avoid that in an urban environment, which is why I'm segueing back to when I made that comment about World War II, I wasn't advocating people carry service pistols loaded with ball ammo for defense in the United States. That's just silly ass. Nor do we need to get ball ammo to get penetration through common barriers like windshields, doors, things like that. The idea that ball ammunition gives more penetration through hard barriers is absolutely false, because those bullets are not designed to penetrate barriers. They're designed to be cheap and to feed real well. And ball ammo does not penetrate car doors or windshields.
Yeah.
As well as things like a modern bonded, or a copper solid, or a controlled expansion bullet. Because when we look at
or a hard cast lead bullet.
Yeah. When we look at critical duty or like HST, where you have the jacket mechanically locked to the bullet, the XTPs like that with that cantilever kind of crimps the jacket into the bullet because it was designed to be a hunting bullet initially. Those bullets penetrate a lot of these hard barriers better than ball ammo does. So the idea that you need ball ammo to do things like shoot through light cover is just patently false.
If I'm not blowing at least a block with my loads, my XTP loads, I'm concerned.
Aren't we doing phrasing anymore? Come on.
What's that?
Steve is not.
What's that?
So I'll throw out a couple things too. 45 hardball has the things. You shoot somebody in the hand with it, they spin around, they fall down, all that crap. That's not crap. But same token, a lot of people blame it for over-penetration. We used hardball both in our department and the sheriff's office. And while we only had one shooting with hardball, and the sheriff's office had many, rarely did the bullet over-penetrate. And if it did, it was usually spent as it over-penetrated. The one case in our town, lady pointed a gun at officers and they engaged her. She was not a big lady. She was actually very small. She was wearing light clothing, and the bullet, while one stayed inside her body, the other one over penetrated, and all it did was hit a piece of paneling, and you could see the base of the bullet. So it would have been a very shallow wound had it hit out. Sheriff's Department had one literally at point blank range, contact distance, and a deputy fired 4 rounds of Winchester hardball into a guy just below his sternum. So it actually hit just nothing but soft tissue. The bullets over penetrated. All 3 of them did. One of them hit a dryer, dented a little bit, and then bounced on top. Second one hit a deputy who was behind him in the vest, did nothing. And then the third one hit below the vest into the tail, the T-shirt tail that's on it. And while he was minorly wounded, when they went to look at the wound and they pulled his shirt up, it popped out like a pimple. And that was at point blank range, and the deputy was less than 2 feet behind. So usually 45 hardball was theoretically penetrates a lot in gel. It really hasn't proven to be that way on the street as far as contacts, because usually I say it is spent by the time it goes through.
You can, when you look at the performance in gel, you can tell why, because that round nose bullet is kind of unstable and it yaws. Yeah. So people think bullets tumble. They do not tumble. It's not like a gymnast going across the floor. Bullets will yaw. So think of your car when it's on ice. With most 9mm, they're going fast enough. It's like your car on ice. If you don't counter steer, you typically see it yaw one way. It'll flip the other way, and then you're backwards driving down the road because you didn't counter steer. Mark and I see that kind of behavior out of round nose bullets all the time.
Yep.
What the 45 tends to do, because of the size, the O-guy of how it's built, is it will just yaw through a gel block, and it'll fishtail all the way through and come to rest. Well, when it's going through that yaw cycle, it's exhibiting quite a bit more drag. So that slows it down quite a bit, which explains why the level of penetration that we see is congruent with the behavior we see in gelatin. You get less penetration in people than you do in a homogeneous substance like that. Sometimes because you have that parachute effect of the skin or people not being homogenous. So when I said previously that, gelatin is it's the best ballistic test media we have, when you have an inconsistent test media, which people are, you will give a wider range of results in penetration. That's to be expected. It just is. If I was to make a gelatin block with more air bubbles in it than normal, then you would get more penetration than less.
Right.
But when we're talking about bullet behavior, 9mm NATO, because it yaws violently and it yaws so reliably, tends to have quite a bit less penetration than a lot of people would initially guess. And I have seen cases on the street where I've seen people with a punctate entrance wound, because round nose makes a small wound, and then the exit wound is wide and it looks like a stab wound with a big knife. It's because you can tell the bullet exited sideways out of the dude. But what Mark's talking about with 45 ACP, and this will make some people angry. If you look at the Army Surgeon General's report that came out of World War II, one of the recommendations was that we do away with the 45 because the penetration was insufficient for battlefield conditions. Because one of the things that they figured out was you lose 200 feet per second just penetrating the skin on entrance. And a 45 in battlefield conditions is only running, by the time it hits somebody's in the 700 feet per second range.
Right.
So they advocated that we do away with the 45 and go to a smaller, higher velocity caliber. I know a lot of people, the two World Wars people, will be unhappy to hear that, but that's what the Army Surgeon General's official report recommended.
Doesn't mean he's correct, but nonetheless, I understand.
Yeah.
Well, we also used, for the 9mm at the time, we were using 115 grain Federal jacket hollow point non-plus-P. And in that same shooting I was discussing about that female, one of the bullets, again, stayed inside her, expanded reliably. The other one expanded slightly but over-penetrated and hit the wall. And actually, I was incorrect. It hit the wall and stuck, and its base was sticking out. The 45 actually bounced off the wall in the same shooting with the same loads or same individual, and hitting there in the chest. So it just depends on what you hit. Depends on where you shoot them, and that to me, I think target shot placement, Chuck, you didn't add that in there, is extremely critical, because none of these things are going to stop physiologically if they aren't put in the right spot. Psychologically they may, but if they're not put in the right spot, they're not gonna stop people. You're gonna have to shoot them again.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things Chuck brought up was yaw. Talking to my buddy, everyone's favorite fish cop, John the Fish Cop, not too long ago, and we were talking about hollow bases versus solid bases and the potential of yaw. And same with certain rifle rounds, because it's so much lighter in the front, heavier in the back. Objects tend to want to yaw and rotate, having the heavier end go forward. Can you guys comment on that?
I'll talk about wad cutters because that's a hollow base bullet, obviously, and I've done extensive testing on it. They don't, unless it hits something along the way. A good example was I was shooting 4-layer denim for my wad cutter testing, and mistakenly had a seam of the jeans I had. Well, it didn't hit the whole whole seam, but it hit half of the jean. So I took half of it out. As soon as it hit that, it made that thing spin. But it only spun once, and it inverted. Otherwise, I have not seen wad cutters do that. There was a guy on YouTube who did a thing with 14 layers of clothing, trying to simulate heavy clothing. And the material he was using had a lot of seams in it. And the test was inconsistent because, at least I believe it was, because he couldn't articulate what he hit within that batch of clothing he had. If he hit a seam, that's going to cause the bullet to do a completely different thing than if it goes through just the clothing itself. So seams make a big difference, and that makes the clothing thicker.
And it's a variable that's not in normal testing.
See what?
And it's a variable that's not normally something that's in testing. You don't
Right.
put the scenes out
Well,
there.
you can do that. I mean, in the real world, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But you can't say this is what's going to happen because of that incident. It depends on what you hit, and that's why I was mentioning the fact that if you hit that. Chuck was mentioning about the skin slows bullets down. So does clothing. I'll finish definitively here very soon. But 4 layers of denim, if you shoot through it, I'm so far finding that right now it's about between 25 and 40 feet per second reduction of velocity. Just shooting the 4 layers of denim, which is the International Wound Ballistic Standards. So if that's the case, when you got a bullet that's traveling 600 feet per second, you're dropping off 40 feet per second, you're going to get a lot less velocity. So that's why some people, I believe, have trouble with some of the wad cutter loads and say that they're ineffective. It depends on what wad cutter you're using and what it's there. So hollow point wise, I'm a big fan of the 135 grains, and I think they do well, the 135 gold dots. But we've seen it in our gel testing at the Revolver Roundup where through denim they don't expand. And I don't think it's so much they're plugging as we used to think. I think it's actually they're being slowed down below the threshold out of a short barrel gun. And that's the bottom line. And when you talk about using a short barrel gun, especially revolvers, we've got to consider a lot of factors. One of those factors is cylinder gap. If your cylinder gap is larger, you're not getting the same performance that everybody else is getting. If you've got a guy that's got one that's got a tighter cylinder gap, you're getting different performance in it. And that 8-inch is going to make a difference too.
I get that quite a bit. People will say, I tested your ammo and it's not doing what the velocity. And I go on, there's several different things. First of all, the throats in your cylinder, then you got the gap, timing, if you're shaving lead or whatever. And then you have altitude. And that's a big thing I've found, even between Brian and I and other people testing. I'm at 2,300 feet a second, or 2,300 elevation, and Brian's down at 1,100, and I get people down at sea level. Yes, yeah, you're mile, yeah. And those are variables, and very real variables people need to take into account. And so, when I test mine, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be, running down to the coast and running up to the mountains, to test at different elevations, but yeah, a lot of
variables.
What's that?
That's what you got us. You got Chuck at sea or about 800 feet. You got me up a mile high. So we can test between.
Yep.
Well, another variable, like a couple of times we've been at gun site, it's been well below freezing.
Yes.
You get below free, like what I've noticed with, and I'm not picking on that. I like that gold dot load, the 135 gold dot, but between summer and winter, you can change at least 50 feet per second right there.
Yeah.
So let's say you are using a snub as a coat pocket gun in cold weather. You're using that load. It's below freezing. Now you've lost 50 feet per second. Now you have to shoot through heavy clothing. You've lost another 50 to 75 feet per second. It could be that bullet dropped below its expansion threshold. And then people look at it as a bullet failure because the bullet didn't expand. Well, when that bullet hit point of aim, it hit with a nose like a cookie cutter. It cut a hole 18 inches deep. It yawed sideways on the way and came in backwards. So it was functionally a wad cutter. That's not a failure. Did it fail to completely open like it was designed? Sure. Did the bullet fail to do the job that we want it to do when we have to shoot things with bullets? No, not necessarily. I wouldn't mind jumping back to something that Matt mentioned about inconsistency. One of the biggest problems that I see with the YouTube stuff is you have people that go buy ballistic, they buy clear gel, not knowing the limitations of the clear gel. Mark and I have used it enough to know it is not as temperature insensitive as they claim it to be. And then batch to batch variability is definitely a thing. So just because you have a clear gel block that looks just like another clear gel block doesn't mean you're going to get the same penetration or performance parameters out of that. I have found the exact same gel block at 70 something degrees versus 30 degrees will give radically different levels of penetration with the exact same load in the exact same block. So the problem we have on YouTube is you have people with no education in what they're doing, buying a block of clear gel, launching 1 or 2 bullets into it, and making sweeping conclusions on this. So that load, that 115 grain Federal 9mm, one of the old school loads, it was the Federal high shock that Mark had talked about. In FBI testing and International Wound Ballistics Association testing, we found there was about a 20% failure to mushroom. So 1 out of 5 shots you shoot would not open up at all, because that bullet was right on the threshold of performance. And, you know, when you fire a bullet, it was designed for, let's say, 1,100 feet per second. Anybody that expects it's always going to hit 1,100 feet per second hasn't chronographed a lot of ammo. There's going to be natural variability. So if it's designed for 1,100 feet per second, maybe it's 1075. The next one's 1110. We got 1115. We're down to 1080. That's normal variation. I know guys like Steve try to really shrink that standard deviation, but it is what it is. So that 115 grain Federal, we know from extensive past testing, has a 20% failure rate to expand. So if you're a YouTube tester and you shoot one and it doesn't expand, or if you shoot one and it does expand, you can't make sweeping conclusions off of a sample that small. It's just absolutely ridiculous. I was made aware of a particular guy that unfortunately has a very popular channel right now. Talks goofy, wears silly ass hats, tends to fire 1 or 2 rounds into a block. Sometimes it's really, really well shot up. And then he will come to wide ranging conclusions off of his observation. One of those, I'm told, was recently he had gotten a hold of some of the, forget if it's border, I think it's Customs and Border Patrol. It's a version of the Gold Dot 2 bullet. It's black in color, has a shoulder. It's got polymer in the nose. It's clear, so it's not red like the Hornady, but everybody knows, like the critical defense, the polymer tip bullets. So that version, that bullet is currently used by LAPD. Versions of the G2 are used by LAPD, Naval Special Warfare, and Customs and Border Patrol, along with other people. It is proving to be an outstanding load with outstanding performance. Somewhere in the world, almost every day, somebody's getting shot with one of those bullets, and they're working really well. But the dude on YouTube using clear gel, firing 1 or 2 shots and wearing goofy hats, had one fail to expand. So he's telling everybody what a horrible performing bullet that is. Not knowing the limitations of clear gel, or even what he's looking at when he looks at it. So one of the things that prompted Matt to ask everybody here for this one is, I just did a little bit of ballistics experimentation that I know Steve and I have talked at length about, but the rest of the world doesn't. One of the problems that I've noted with clear gel is when you add heavy clothing, and I will use that generically as a term along with 4-layer denim, is my theory was, because what I was seeing, differences on the street, differences in true FBI, International Wound Ballistics Association spec ordnance gel, which is made out of, it's a collagen base, it's a gelatin based substance. The difference between that and clear gel, I was seeing bullets fail to mushroom that I know don't have a problem with failing to mushroom. Like 147 grain HST is one of those bullets. Outstanding performer on the street, works really well, tests really well, but I've seen a few of them fail to expand through 4-layer denim and clear gel. So, and that's odd. My theory was that clear gel, the velocity expansion threshold for clear gel and bullets to perform was much higher than it is in legitimate FBI specification 10% ballistics gelatin. And so I had been seeing some of that with Steve's DB load, the 357 grain Magnum 158 grain low recoil load. That XTP bullet opens up very nicely in bare clear gel. It does not open up in bare clear gel through 4-layer denim, or even lighter clothing barriers like 4 layers of cotton t-shirt was enough to cause it to fail to mushroom. So I wanted to test this. So I made some small blocks 3 inches deep of 10% organic ballistic gelatin. And my test parameters were, I took my 2 3/4 inch GP100 and I launched the DB load, which for Daryl Bulkey, if people don't know, into clear gel, opens up, works great. 4 layers of t-shirt, bullet fails to mushroom. And I'm on the same clear gel block. Take the same t-shirt, the same clear gel block. I put a 3-inch block of organic gelatin behind the t-shirt in front of the clear gel block. Now when the bullet that failed to mushroom through the t-shirt into the clear gel, when it hits the t-shirt, the 4 layers of t-shirt, and it hits the organic gel, it mushrooms beautifully and perfectly, and then it goes through the 3 inches and then carries onto the clear gel. So I wanted to see that variable. So what this tells me is that the threshold for expansion for that bullet in organic gel, FBI type gel, is what Hornady says it is. It goes down into the 800 feet per second range. Because Steve, you got that loaded, what, 935, something like that? That DB load?
950 for the XTP, about 935 for the TMJ.
Okay. So over
I wanted to give the XTP just a little more threshold of poop to make sure that, if it goes through some kind of a barrier or something, still, if it has a loss, it's still going to be within its power band.
Yeah. So I'm going to do some more of that, but I did that with the DB load. And I tested the 100 grain 32 H&R mag as well from my 2-inch LCR, that the 100 grain that Steve loads, which I really like because it hits dead to the sights out of that gun. And I'm going to start carrying it as a backup gun. So the exact same thing. Bullet mushrooms beautifully into kind of a jagged wad cutter when it hits clear gel. Fails to mushroom in the 4 layers of t-shirt over clear gel. If I add the 4 layers of t-shirt with the organic gel, and why did I just use a 3-inch block? Quite frankly, because it's a lot easier than making an entire 16-inch block of ordnance gel. And we know that jacketed hollow points, when they open up in the first 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. 2 inches of organic, the FBI type gel, is enough to open up a jacketed hollow point. There's pictures of, you can see a bullet coming in. There's a 2-inch slice of ballistic gel. There's one famously on the cover of Evan Marshall's Stopping Power book. It's a 45 Hydroshock, and you can see where it came in, and it's coming out the other side of the 2-inch gel block fully mushroomed. So we know that what Gary Roberts talks about, the neck length, you want to see the short neck length when you're having this kind of bullet performance. I knew 3 inches of, if it was going to work, that was going to do it. And it's a lot easier to make a consistent batch of small 3-inch blocks of gelatin than one giant block of 16 inches of gelatin, to prove my point. So
that is cool.
So what I did was, again, into the clear gel with 4 layers of t-shirt, and then clear gel, 4 layers of t-shirt, organic gelatin into the clear gel.
3 inches of it.
I'm sorry?
3 inches of the organic.
Yes. Just enough to make it open up. If it was going to open up, that was going to do it. Mark asked me, well, why didn't you test the 4-layer denim? Blatant honesty, when I was packing, I forgot my denim. It was sitting right there, and I walked off without it. So
just go to Kmart, get 2 legs, fold them. Yeah.
So I'm going to replicate that with 4 layers of denim. But what it told me was a lot about the limitations of bullets in clear gel. Any bullet that's going less than 1,000 feet per second is going to see that issue pop up that I'm talking about. And
if it's an expanding bullet.
Yes, expanding bullets.
Does not for non-expanding bullets.
I have seen this even in well-developed bullets like 147 grain HST out of a Glock 43 failed to expand at clear gel through 4-layer denim. And we know that bullet actually works on the street. So if your test doesn't mimic reality, reality is not the problem. That's a fact. So throwing that out there, that a lot of the YouTube testing that you see is, it really doesn't prove anything. And people are making wide-ranging conclusions on minimal information and very, very small sample sizes and coming to conclusions that they, quite frankly, don't have the education to come to. Just throwing that out there. And
I love it.
Nor is something like shooting groceries going to necessarily be a valid ballistic test.
What?
The baloney test?
That's baloney.
I've seen baloney packs.
It's interesting. It gives a different perspective on it. It probably beats water jugs by themselves. Although water jugs, if you do it correctly, or cartons, cardboard cartons, some of the folks who are involved with Dr. Factor have come out and said, you get the right, milk cartons and use that. You can actually come up with some good parameters to make a good valid test. McPherson talks about his 55-gallon water barrel test that he does or did. And there's other things you can do with it. Our friend Mike Wood from the Revolver Guy did a great series of articles for, I believe it was Police One or one of the magazines, comparing actual ordnance gel to clear ballistics with Hornaday in their laboratories, side by side, making them both at the time, and found the differences in there. We're talking about expanding bullets. My testing with solid bullets, the wad cutter testing I've done, because clear ballistics is obviously easier to use, but I also have relied on other folks' materials from it. I find that you might get an inch or more penetration in clear ballistics than you do with ordnance gel, but not much. Chuck and I did a test at the last Revolver Roundup where I shot a 6-inch Model 10 with a Black Hills wad cutter, and it went 15.25 inches. Black Hills, shooting their ordnance gel in their testing and their video, went 15 inches. I've got Brass Fetcher, who does a lot of ballistic testing. He's a professional lab. He showed the federal wad cutters going, let's see, I've got it down here, through heavy clothing, FBI heavy clothing with 14.8 and 16 inches in bare gel. I've got it going 18.25 through heavy clothing and 19 inches. So about 2 inches difference, maybe 3 inches difference in penetration, but not that much. And that was just one test with one load. Like I always say, all wad cutters are not the same, and that's a fact. They're just not the same, whether velocity, material they're made from, etc. Steve just produced a new wad cutter, which I'm excited about, which has a non-jacketed or non-plated wad cutter bullet, but coated, that I'm going to give a try and see how it works here when I get the next time I go out. Like I said, I missed it by one day. It came in the day after I finished off the last batch of testing. So we'll get it tested, but it'll be a few weeks before I get a chance to go back out again.
So the way this is going, Mark, your book is never going to come out because people are going to keep coming out with wad cutters.
That's a fact.
And I hate you guys for it.
I am done. Okay, I'm done. I'm done making wad cutters until that book comes out. All right.
All right, deal. Thank you, Steve.
Volume 2. So I got a question for you guys, and then we'll take a quick little break, and then I want to get into what exactly should people be looking at with gel testing. What are the variables? What are the factors? So my question for you guys is, when you look at that box of ammo and it says velocity, it says all this kind of stuff, is any of that standardized, or are some where my neck of the woods and the others are underwater? And because we've already discussed how altitude, weather, all kinds of things can alter this. So is there a standard for that when they're saying this velocity?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you guys it was on that last ModCast, you had a couple, whatever, on the 45 Colt.
Yeah.
And Mark and DB did that test on that 45 Colt load I have. It's just a standard for the old Colt, single action armies. So it's low pressure, whatever. That thing blew 2 blocks, at 700 and low 700s on the velocity. And so design of the bullet is a factor as well. It has to be put in there. So when you look at velocities, whatever, it's just a piece of the pie, but I need to look at a piece of the picture. I need to look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
What's the bullet design? What's the shape of the bullet? And what's it zipping out at? And then you guys can, chime after that. But that's what I look at. Just because you have that doesn't tell me anything. I mean, it tells me something, but it's just a part of the picture. It's not the whole picture.
Yeah, Matt, so box velocity is nominal from a test barrel, like for 38s with a vented. What they did if you look at V4 on when it's talking about the barrel length, that's a lab barrel that they use, and they want a pressure test so it's safe, and then they have velocity parameters they go for. The old people think they downloaded ammo nowadays because we're weak and we're pansies, and back in the old days they loaded stuff to manly pressures. What they did was, like for revolver ammo, they had a non-vented test barrel. So what they came up with was a vented test barrel, 4 inches, to mimic a actual service revolver, because those old test barrels were 7.5 inches in many of those calibers. So that's going to give you quite a bit more velocity, which gives you bragging rights in the catalog. But then now that chronographs are common, a lot of people will go test their own ammo. So ammo, he was kind of controversial, especially in a tactical realm. And but I actually kind of like the guy's videos. Paul Harrell had a whole monologue on chronographs about not all chronographs agree, and you have variabilities. Right. And there's this. He did that as a disclaimer every one of his videos, just to give people a hint that elevation, humidity, temperature for the day.
Talk to some snipers about that.
I have seen where there's a dude that does and what is the guy's name? I'm forgetting the channel now, but he does a pretty good job of chronographing ammo, and he will often find that like the 4-something inch Glock 19 will give a higher velocity than his Beretta 92 with the 5-inch barrel, because these are variables that we see. Like one thing that I noticed is some of my Ruger revolvers will consistently give higher velocities than a Smith & Wesson or a Colt. And I think it has to do. I
know why.
It has to do
magic.
With rifling twist, the bore diameter. Right. We're talking 10,000ths of an inch bore diameter variability. All of these variables are in play. So when you look at the box velocity, it's nominal.
So I'll throw out that too. Colts have always shot faster than Smith & Wesson revolvers. If you look at any articles back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, Colts always had it faster. Their bore diameter is smaller than a Smith. Their rifling was faster than a Smith. Smiths are always standard of an 18.75 inch. It's rifling for almost universal for 38 special or almost any Smith & Wesson revolver. Where Colt at the time was using a 1 in 14 twist and a much tighter bore, and bullets would go faster. We're talking about bore, we're talking again a couple thousandths of an inch, but still that makes a difference in velocities. The Rugers we're talking about the LCRs, they're a 1 in 16 inch twist with a tighter bore than the Smith & Wesson revolvers, and that's another reason for differences in velocities. You cannot rely on the box. That's just a fact. And chronographs do change. I have 3 different chronographs, and none of them come out exactly the same each time you shoot around, even though they're right next to each other, and I shoot through them, either the lab radar, mine's a Garmin, but the radar one, or I shoot through 2 sky screens. They don't come out the same. And it's just, there's too many variables in there. We need to get some parameters and some minimal ideas of it, which what I'm doing again for my book is what the minimal velocity is. We're going to get performance that you want, expect it, and that's the best we can do with it. Your cylinder gap is going to make, I need to emphasize that, it makes a big difference on the guns. The bigger the cylinder gap, 40 feet per second, the difference in velocity is not uncommon. I tested 10 different 642s. Same guns, same barrel length, same everything. Not one of them had the same velocities, even though some of them even had the same cylinder gap. But I went from an 0.4 for one up to a 0.10 for another. And that 40 to 50 feet per second difference in velocity was noticeable. So these are things that people need to take into account when they do it. Temperature really affects it. Whether you're doing your testing that day and you're out in the sun and you leave your ammunition in the sun, you're going to get a much higher velocity than you would if you're carrying it on your person and or out in whatever weather you're in. So these are all really big variables that people need to count in there. Come up with a general standard from folks that make a reliable performance for it, and then you can go with some ideas on what you're going to get out of your gun. Mike Ventura, gun writer who recently passed away, one of the things that I liked about him and appreciated is he never published velocities, because he said, because my velocities will not be the same as your velocities. So therefore, I'm not going to publish these things because there's too many variables in there. Yeah. And we've seen this over and over again, and I respected that he would not publish those during his testing, because people expect the same. I was that way. I expect it to be the same as if I'm doing my own testing. What do you mean it's not doing 1,100 feet per second? Mine's only doing 975. Why is that? So yeah. Anyway,
if you guys, anybody out there watching this are like hand loaders, for many years you look at these hand loading the books,
sure,
whichever, RCBS, Spear, whatever, and some of them wouldn't even, throw a test barrel out there, and they have these velocities, and some would. When you look at the head of the chapter for a certain caliber, 9 millimeters running at like an 8-inch barrel. Now, who's shooting a 9 millimeter out of an 8-inch barrel? I mean, now you get the pistol caliber. Pistol caliber
exactly.
Carbines, right? But before then, I'm thinking, what? That's not even realistic to even. Why? What? Let's get on the playing field here. So there's a lot of different problems here with that. Values are all over the board, and so you have to have a constant. And people were talking about, I was having a discussion with a guy on one of his Facebook pages. He came out, I can't remember the name of the ammo company. I asked him when he shot his stuff. I think I mentioned, I sent that thing to Chuck. I said, you ever heard of this company before? It's this hollow point. What's that? No, I can't remember the name of it. But the thing really expanded. I mean, this is like huge, but little tiny fingers and all this kind of stuff, whatever. And I said, what'd you shoot that through? And he goes, a hog. I'm going, I'd like to see it through an FBI test. And we went on and on about the FBI test.
I've never been attacked by jail.
Yeah, I never been attacked by jail and whatever else. And then
never been attacked by a hog.
Finally, it's like, well, they didn't pull it out of their caboose when they came up with that jail. That was, done over a long period of time, and get that to replicate the best they could to flesh and whatever. And then finally I had to say, you ever heard of Doc Roberts? Yeah, I kind of have. I said, so I played that. I sent him that clip. And you had him on the last ModCast where he came on for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, whatever. And what's that?
I think it was an hour.
And he went on about how that was developed and everything else. It was very good. And then the two tests that he came up with that he recommends at every 4 layers of denim and windshield. That's if a bullet's going to do that in those two mediums, it's going to do it. And so I said, finally he conceded. He goes, I don't think our bullets would pass the FBI test. I said, okay, fair enough. He
admits it. That's awesome.
But I said, I respect that. But I said, to just poo-poo that, I said, there is a value there that is a standard across the board that everybody's been using. And then not only but using it, but people who are using it are evaluating it and getting the test results and evaluating them properly.
Okay.
And not just,
See, let's quantify that though, because a lot of manufacturers make two different kinds of loads. I'll give Hornady a good example. Hornady makes their critical defense rounds to meet two of the FBI's criteria for their FBI testing, bare gel and heavy clothing. Where critical duty, they make it so it'll penetrate the steel, the windshield, the wood, the sheetrock. So manufacturers make different ammo for different criterias. My 38 Special wad cutters will not do well on a windshield. I know that, but that's not why I carry them. I don't carry them because I'm going to shoot through people's windshields with them. That's not the purpose. It is up close and personal what I'm using. if I was going to go back on duty and have to potentially go against somebody sitting in a car, then yeah, I'd carry something different than I have, but also carry a different gun than I carry now. So that FBI criteria, people use that. It's kind of like mil spec. It's very nebulous specification because manufacturer, well, this meets mil spec. We'll say a magazine. This meets U.S. military mil spec. Well, yeah, the finish does. Nothing else in the magazine does, but because they say that makes one thing, the finish makes it. They say, well, this magazine meets mil spec. It's a very nebulous term that people utilize, and we need to make sure we're clarifying on that as to what will and will not work on the whole FBI protocol testing. Border Patrol's protocol testing, they don't test everything the FBI does, and their penetration requirements are 8 inches to 12 inches. That's what they ideally want to have, unless that's changed since I've read last. And they're just having a different way they're performing the ammunition. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, and there's no one right way. We look at stuff that happens on the street. We look at stuff that we can test. The bullets that worked on the street, how are they performing in the gel, and then we shoot other bullets in the gel if it performs the same way as it does in the gel with the ones that worked on the street. We can make some articulation that that bullet may perform, but until we actually shoot it on the street, we're not going to know for sure.
So during that little break, I got to play with my Lipsies, Ruger Red Hawk and 45 Colt. I'd show you, but it would kill the feed, so that's what YouTube does. But I do have some of Steve's 45 Colt right here.
I really enjoyed Brian with a Y, our buddy Brian with a Y. He said something today that just made me chuckle. He said there's a renaissance with the 45 Colt. Mm-hmm. And I'm going like, it never left.
I think it's gotten attention that it didn't get before. Yeah.
Okay, I think it's because he's discovered it and he's addressing stuff on YouTube. But 45 Colt has been around. It's one of our oldest cartridges. Yeah,
and it's a cowboy. Yeah,
ever died. It's been used by Patton used it in World War II.
Yeah,
guy used it well up into the 70s. DB used it on their agency.
Yeah, that was his SWAT gun.
Died.
And for me, I have never given it a second thought until you guys started talking about it in that chat. I thought, this is amazing. We need to do a podcast on it. And you guys did it. And that is one of my favorite episodes.
It was fun.
It was such good information. And then I had to take off and you guys kept on going and I re-listened to just that part. And it was amazing. Absolutely loved it. And shooting so yeah, it is up there. What is it? My Taurus Raging Hunter 44 mag with full mag loads. It's a decent shooter. It got decent recoil. It's not too bad. I can shoot it one-handed without any issue. I'd shoot that one-handed, and then I'd shoot this 45 Lipsies Red Hawk. Man, the 45 is awesome. I really like shooting that. It's just cool.
It's a cool gun.
Yeah.
They are.
So, a question came up in chat. So we have live chat. So if you're listening, if you're listening, you are in the future. If you're watching, you're in the present. Right now we're recording on YouTube. There is a live chat going on, and someone was asking about chronographs. Last episode we did discuss them a bit. Why don't we cover chronographs as how they relate to testing and how YouTube people are using it? Because we just talked about how there are all those different variables. What about the devices themselves? And what are the ones that you guys are using, and what have you found to be working best for your needs?
Okay. I'm using the Garmin, which is relatively new to me. The downside of the Garmin is I can't do any gel testing with it because it has to have at least 15 to 20 yards distance from the bullet before it picks it up. I've had an old crony back in the late 80s. I bought this thing, and it still works well. I'm trying to think of the current one I've got, which is oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it. You guys may remember it, but it's a very common chronograph, and it seems to be very accurate and very reliable use with it. really just comes down to what you do. You'll come up with it, but whether it's accurate or not, you really won't know, and that's the fact. I mean, you don't know if it's giving you true readings or not, unless you've got something that you can base it on based on past experience. Whether accurate or not is there, but you'll see chronographs, at least with the sky screens. You'll fire sometimes. You go like, why did it do that? Why did I get this velocity out of this thing when I haven't had any all that day? And it just has to be how the sun hits the screens and the way the bullet goes. So, but most of the chronographs out there now are pretty reliable for that. I'll look up while I'm talking to you guys. I'll look up what the name of my chronograph is. It's one that I think most people utilize, and it's a pretty good one besides the Garmin.
So we got four. Go ahead.
Is it competition? Is it something competition dynamics or competition edge or something?
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
So we got 4 cops here, and I'm thinking of radar, and I'm thinking of tuning forks. I'm surprised they don't have something to test out your chrono to make sure it's on.
You're just trusting the manufacturer that it is. Yeah. But again, comparing it side by side with other chronographs, I'm finding 20 to 40 feet per second difference. Not much. I mean, there's not that much difference in it. And it depends also on the radar where it picks it up, because the bullet going down range is going to be slower than one is leaving the muzzle at 6 feet from the muzzle. So bullets slow down considerable amount during the time. And the bullet shape has a big effect on that. My wad cutters slow down tremendously because of that blunt shape of the bullet as they're going out the barrel.
Mm-hmm. I saw the one question, Matt, and one of the guys asked if that was the best technology for that, and it pretty much is. I know that, like the Garmin and things like that are a modern miniaturized version of what the military's been using for quite some time for things like counter battery fire, or when they're doing weapons testing. Like, you can't put sky screens up and then fire 120 millimeter Sabo round over the top of it at 6,000 feet per second and expect it to still be there, So that we use radar for things like that. Between the two technologies, I think it's well developed enough that it's definitely close enough, more than close enough for our purposes for what we need to know.
Cool. Yeah, the problem I had with sky screen, I can't remember it wasn't the competitive electronics version of I can't remember the name of it, but I would shoot test ammo and it wouldn't, there'd be nothing there. It wouldn't even register it, or see when I do my test loads to develop a load, I hand trickle the powder in. So I know they're dead nuts on one to another. I don't use automated powder dropping like that. They're hand trickled in.
Single round.
Not those, but when I'm testing, they're hand trickled in, and I'm looking at my sky screen. I'm getting 50 to 80 feet of difference in velocity. I go, that can't be, and I was getting frustrated.
Check it first,
and then I'd get people calling me back, going, "Hey, it's not matching what I've got." Blah, blah. So finally, I said, "Screw it." So I invested in the Garmin, and I always run back off my berm about 20 yards, and shoot the stuff, and the consistency it's showing me that every shot registers. I even went out pitch black to see if that thing registers. It'll register. It's just like a radar. Doesn't matter on the weather, lighting conditions, anything. It kind of takes it out. Maybe but the consistency is there. Is what I need. That every shot I take, it's going to give me something feedback. Instead of all of a sudden nothing. There's just nothing there. It's like I'm wasting all this ammo trying to get my loads developed, and I'm not getting feedback. Then that gets frustrating.
Steve, that's the reason why when I do my testing, I have an airsoft gun that I shoot first. Almost, in fact, at the round that we shoot, I shoot an airsoft gun to make sure the screens are picking up, and then I will do bullet testing, because I've lost a lot of money trying to shoot through screens and not working.
Yep.
So that has worked well for me, and we've done that well with the roundup, and it works well because, truthfully, my little airsoft gun, little spring-loaded airsoft gun, is more consistent than most of the guns that I shoot as far as velocity. It's just amazing that that little pellet's going out the same consistent speed. out of a spring-loaded.
Yeah, because when I'm mixing up FBI gel, it has to be the right temperature, and you got to use the BB at a certain velocity, and so I got to run it through a chrono to get the BB at the right, setting, and before I calibrate that gel block. And with that Garmin, every BB counts. Every BB is showing everything before I shoot my gel block for calibration. It's like,
Right.
So that's where I'm at. I'm sure there's other chronos out there that are, just as good. I just that little Garmin, the size of half the size of a cell phone, comes with its own tripod. Put it out there and just start shooting and
It's
check
a
stuff out.
nice rig.
It's a portable. It's nice for, like I said, last second people saying, I got this load. Hang on, I got my Garmin right here. Let's set it up. You don't have this big, box or this bag you have to have of, back in the old day, whatever, of stuff you had to set up or whatever. It's like you turn it on, rifle, pistol, or whatever, and hit the, give you the velocity range and type in the bullet weight. There you go, hit it. 2-3 minutes, and it's you're shooting.
The technology has improved dramatically with that, but again, unfortunately, it doesn't work when you're shooting gel blocks because you've got to have that distance involved, and you don't shoot gel blocks at that kind of a distance. Except for me,
with my Garmin, I have to hit velocity first, and then go to the gel block.
Yeah.
So
I did testing through my chronograph, and it is a Competition Electronics Pro DXL, the one that I utilize. I wanted to see what cutters would do in gel at 50 yards out of a 1 7/8" barrel. And so I chronographed it obviously at the muzzle and then shot the gel blocks through the chronograph to get the velocities. And then I used Sierra's ballistic software with a wad cutter bullet to calculate what the velocity was at 50 yards because I was getting penetration. It was adequate and met what we needed to have requirement-wise at 50 yards. We're still getting over 12 inches of penetration, which I was surprised. I was actually surprised at that we're getting that much penetration with it. So that was through bare gel. It wasn't through 4 layers of denim, but it was.
Well, it's because you forgot it. You forgot the jeans.
No, I didn't forget it. I didn't have it wide enough, and I was shooting at a target that was 12 inches wide with that 1 7/8" or 16 inches wide, which was 1 7/8" barrel to get a better chance of hitting it at the distance when I was shooting.
Wide-legged jeans are popular right now, so I don't know what's popular. I just see what my daughter wears.
Yeah, Death Before Disco too. It's like, oh my god.
Well, speaking of denim, you got to when you use denim. Chuck and I were talking about this in the last phone call we had. Denim comes in different weights, and International Wound Ballistics has their standard of what they use for denim. And I went out and tried to find jeans that would match as close as I could to International Wound Ballistics to be able to have a easy, consistent material. And the Wrangler Rustler jeans were the ones that I utilized because they were within a quarter ounce of what the International Wound Ballistics used for their stuff. I figured that's pretty close. As close as I can get anyway for my testing. And be consistent.
One thing that I think people don't realize is that the FBI their clothing tests are actually have specified thread counts for their cloth, and it's like it's there for a reason. So that's another variable that needs to be added in there.
It's just a standard. That's the idea behind it. Yeah. Yes, nobody wears 4 layers of denim. We understand that, but that's not the reason for it. Like Chuck said, it's an industry standard. It's a thing we can measure consistently through, and if it works through that, then it's probably going to work through other things. I decided I'm going to do another test. I'm buying a jean jacket with the pile lining in it. And I'm going to shoot through that because that is in clothing, which will match then what people have. And I also have an old leather jacket that I'm going to shoot up to see what it does because I've seen a couple of shootings in my town where guys have shot through leather jackets, and leather does a number on bullets and does a number on projectiles.
Go full on Canadian tuxedo. As a matter of fact, that might not be a bad idea. Get a heavier grade Canadian tuxedo. You're bulletproof. Because the standards are not set for that.
Who came up with that term here a couple of ModCasts ago about farmer armor?
I think I might have missed that one.
Was that? No, it was on your ModCast.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was. It was on farm. Was it that 45? I think it was on the 45 ModCast. I think
there was so
Brian
much in that.
that came up with farmer armor or something like that.
Well, he's listening. He should be jumping in right now.
Carhartt.
Yeah, I mean, there's out here. I live out eastern Washington, and it gets down to single digits, sometimes below, and you're going to have people with 4 layers of denim. They're running Carhartts, and you got 2 layers of denim in the Carhartt jacket itself. You have the outer, then you have the inner, where it creates a pocket. So there's 2 layers of denim. Then the same if they're wearing a Carhartt overall. Now if you shoot them straight on whatever, you've got 4 layers of denim, and then that's not only 4 layers of denim, but you have the shirts underneath the Carhartt. So you've got several layers there. So where you're living,
people buy Carhartt aren't the guys we shoot.
Generally not, no. But I was talking I think it was Chuck, you and I were talking about it, is that what I see generally is you've got the jackets that have the new insulation in them, which is usually a nylon outer, nylon inner, and then some kind of synthetic insulation. And then you've got the lightweight, underlayers. And so most of the layers are fairly thin. They're not very thick on the average, but of course you got people wearing the hoodies and what other stuff. But I was looking at the average skier or something like that. They're wearing those new fangled synthetic layers, and they're fairly thin, and the jacket's thin, but it has that again the synthetic or down insulation in it, and it's way different than it's going to be for the 4 layers of denim or the farmer armor.
Yeah, or they say the rancher is wearing his, heavy winter clothing over the top of it is going to make a difference too. One of the questions came up. Let's see, I just had it here a second. I'm sorry, I lost it. It went away because other questions came up. I'll find it. I want to answer that question for him, so let me find it real quick. Sorry, you guys continue on.
Oh, no worries. You find it, because I can pull it up on the screen too.
Mind if I hit on that 4-layer denim thing? Because I hear that nobody wears 4 layers. It's an engineering test. That's all it is. The original FBI heavy clothing, their version of heavy clothing was invented with good for good reason. But then International Wind Ballistics Association, Fackler, Gary Roberts, the guys who were involved in that, Eugene Wolberg, we were seeing bullets that did well in that test or did okay in that test failing on the street, failing to mushroom on the street. And this is all going to be service caliber handgun stuff. So IWBA came up with the 4-layer denim test after a bunch of testing of different tests just to give an acid test to jacket hollow point bullets. What they found was if you do that test to specification, that bullets that pass that test don't fail on the street. So all it is a worst case scenario engineering test. How valid do I think that is? And we were talking about a bunch of different stuff here. The guys my contacts at Spear and Federal tell me that they do test to the IWBA standard. Both they do the FBI and the IWBA, so they use the 4-layer denim because it is an acid test for service caliber ammo opening up through a heavy clothing barrier. The 124 gram plus P gold dot that at my old job was using was tested to those standards, and one of my dudes was in a shooting, hit a guy with 2 of the 9mm gold dots, the plus P 124. Both of those went clean through the guy, fully mushroomed. The dude was wearing remember the big puffy Oakland Raiders football coats that guys are the real long ones that were popular. He was wearing an Oakland Raiders coat over Carhartt coveralls. Under that, he had a Levi jacket, a flannel shirt, a long john shirt, and a T-shirt.
Yeah.
So both of those bullets mushroomed perfectly going through all of that. One of the reasons that I say that is I just had an exchange with a different dude who's famous in the world that kind of does what Steve does, but has a little bit more internet presence. And he constantly pushes the idea that hollow points don't open up through clothing. My observation in real life of well-designed hollow points is they do in fact open up through clothing, and a continuing to spout 40-year-old information does no one a good service. I tried to politely point that out on his YouTube channel, and I was rudely dismissed on that information, but that's pretty typical when people are putting information out with the motive of selling more product. I'll just say that. There's a lot of people out there selling, we've got the best bullet, we've got the magic bullet. I can recommend bullets to people. None of them are going to have any type of fangs or exploding parts or fragmenting.
External hollow points?
They're not going to have magic flutes.
No thermonuclear devices
that have mystery waves or shape charge technology or any of this other bullshit that people are arguing about.
Liquefy internal organs.
Yes. Yeah. I've literally heard a particular bullet manufacturer at a trade show tell people that if one of their 9mm bullets strikes a human torso, it will liquefy the internal organs. It's beyond ridiculous.
I think I even know the guys who told you that, Chuck.
I actually toured that facility earlier this spring. Yeah, they're shooting in there. I said, "What's your test bed?" They shoot brisket injected with water.
Sounds delicious.
Said, what about the FBI test? Well, the FBI test isn't about expansion. Okay.
Neither is defensive ammunition. It controls penetration, but
so when we're talking about valid test medium, meat that has been drained of blood, lost all elasticity, and has been sitting in a refrigerator is groceries. That's not a valid test medium anymore. It's just not.
One of the things I want to do, if I can, if I get a chance to do it, I want to go pig hunting, and I want to get a pig and shoot it with something that will stop it. Then I want to immediately go to the pig while it's still warm and almost still breathing, and pump a bunch of different wad cutters from different guns into it and see what kind of penetration I get. Just because.
I have used road injured deer or deer that I have shot deer hunting on more than one occasion to test 38 wad cutter ammo. I had it was over a 220-pound doe that I put down one time. And then I put 2 Remington wad cutters and 2 critical defense 110 grain non-plus P from my 642 into the chest cavity of this doe. I saw a dramatic difference in penetration and internal damage between the wad cutters and the critical duty. Critical defense, my bad. The critical defense didn't open up when it because they both hit ribs, didn't open up. The wad cutters dramatically fragmented the rib material on exit and tore the lungs up really bad. Whereas
oranges?
No, because oranges are not lungs. If you were breathing orange juice, you would die.
There you go.
We breathe air.
Yeah.
But,
or your head's made out of a watermelon. Yeah.
The critical defense bullets look like somebody took a 3/8-inch drill bit and just drilled the cleanest hole all the way through this deer. Whereas you could tell the wad cutters had hit the rib and mushroomed dramatically. Is this going to be valid for defensive bullets? If you've seen what a deer rib looks like versus what a people rib looks like, probably not as much, but I have had to put down on the road, or I have had a chance while deer hunting to put bonus rounds into deer after they're down enough to also have done, I don't know, dozens of handgun shots into dead animals, specifically like what Mark's talking about.
Yeah.
So why don't we get into now, what should people be looking for when they watch these videos? What are some dead giveaways that, okay, this is either an ad or this is misinformation. It's plain wrong. For you guys, what are those clues that you're seeing?
Sample size. If they're firing one or two shots and making sweeping observations and coming to conclusions. One of the best guys out there that I have seen actually prepare his gel is kind of friends with the guy now, Tennessee Outdoors 9. His ordnance gel tests are pretty legit, and even his older Simtel tests are pretty legit. But the shooting the bull dude, he was doing 5-shot averages on his, which is exactly what you should do as a minimum to come to conclusions. And what he found was some of these loads, you'd shoot one bullet, it would look perfect. And let's say you stop right there, you think, oh, this bullet does this. Well, he was shooting 5-shot average. He might get one perfect, one doesn't open up at all, and 3 are somewhere in the middle. And then they got a 6-inch range or 10-inch range of variability in penetration. Well, that sample size is really an important thing. That also things like maybe do they chronograph, so that if I know a particular load typically gives a particular result and they chronograph and it is low or it is high, then that tells me something, that it's cold there that day, the guy's got different elevation, that sort of thing. So when you have bullets that are somewhere in it, say you are shooting from a short barrel gun and it's cold weather, and I see the velocity they're getting as part of their chrono test, that'll tell me, well, that bullet's getting down low into its design velocity or maybe below its design velocity. Whereas I'll tell you, critical duty, Hornady critical duty works really well out of service size guns, doesn't work great out of really compact guns. Like their 9mm works great out of a service size gun, Glock 19, Glock 17, doesn't work real well out of a Glock 43 because it drops below its designed expansion threshold. The bullet is still doing exactly what it was designed to do. What it was not designed to be was a short gun load. It just is what it is. So when I see somebody if they're doing a larger sample size, they're doing consistency, and they're doing things like some chronograph testing. And then quite frankly, I get judgy on guys shooting groups. If dude can't shoot, if they're going for combat accuracy and they're kind of like spreading the trauma, that tells me about a little bit about the dude doing the testing. I'm a little judgy about people shooting. That said, then other things besides it being interesting, shooting groceries doesn't really tell you a lot because of the inconsistency of the medium.
What about claims?
I'm sorry?
Oh, what about claims? And we're just talking handgun here.
Claims?
Claims. Because based on our discussion, all of our discussions, and then adding in Gary and other people and other recognized expert type people, the optimal performance that we're looking at fits in this nice little box. Their bullets are poking holes. That's all. Look at this temp cavity. This is huge. So doesn't mean anything.
Most people looking at temp cavity, particularly in clear gel, have no idea what I've heard people say, look at this permanent temporary cavity.
Yes.
Which one is it? Because you have a permanent cavity, you have a crush cavity, you have temporary cavity. Handgun bullets do not have enough temporary cavity to impart more wounding. So when you, especially, and this is where the snake oil salesmen come out of the woodwork, if you're shooting bullets with magic flutes and it causes these little waves in the gelatin and things like that, it's not significant enough to add to wounding. It just isn't.
They can't they can't get past the elasticity of the organ and the whatever to make a permanent wound at that point. They don't have the power to do that.
Yes.
Does not stretch the tissue beyond its ability to stretch. So it's a bruise. The best you're going to get out of it's a bruise around that area outside of that the permanent cavity.
And that we talked about that in past ModCasts, but I know the 5.7 fanboys, they want to push that it's some sort of rifle-like pistol because the bullets hit 2,000 feet per second is not a magic threshold where when you're over that, you have a large temporary cavity and you're under that, you don't. We know that 5.56 in the 2,800, 3,200 feet per second range, like the classic old M16 A1 M193 ball, he had a 55 grain load at 3,200 feet per second. That would yaw, dramatically fragment the bullet inside of 200 meters, and you would have a temporary cavity, sometimes several inches across. Significant wounding involved in that. When we start to drop that bullet out of like a 10-inch barrel or a 7.5-inch barrel, if you want to buy a really dumb gun, then that bullet is going to act like a 22 Magnum at best, because the bullet may still yaw, may not, definitely won't fragment. Temporary cavity is going to be insignificant. Now, below that 2,000 feet per second threshold, can you have significant temporary cavity? Yes, because we see that in like 12 gauge Foster style slugs. So you have an ounce and a quarter of lead at 1,650 feet per second. Temp cavity tends to be significant, and I mean 6 or 8 inches across, which is why when slugs hit human beings, they tend to drop in their tracks, because spinal cord concussion is a thing. What you just did is you invoked the old hit the central nervous system. So if you hit an average built dude in the chest with a 12 gauge slug, even if you miss the spine, that temp cavity might be enough to thump that spine, cause a spinal cord concussion. The guy drops in his tracks. That's a central nervous system artifact because of the interplay between the body and the temp cavity size. Handguns, service-size handguns, in no way impart temporary cavity that has anything significant like that. And anybody that claims otherwise is trying to sell you bullshit.
I'll throw out one that happened. Unfortunately, it was a friend of mine's son who did this. My friend was a LA firefighter. His son got his Ruger Super Blackhawk loaded with 240 grain jacket hollow points. I don't know what brand, but and he took it on the bus with him because he'd been picked on by a bunch of kids. And this kid was coming up to pound the crap out of him again. He said, "Enough's enough." Stood in the aisles, kids coming at him, and punched him in the chest with a 240 grain 44 Magnum jacket hollow point. And the kid walked off the bus, walked into the ambulance, and basically was released that day because it hit nothing vital and did not expand, did not do anything permanent, real serious damage to him. And that was one case where I was shocked at myself, because it was like one of those, like, what do you mean you hit him with a 44 Magnum? That's unreal. But that's what happened to him. Now, I don't know specifically where it hit him, but it's probably hit him in the chest. And like I said, the kid walked off the bus and walked into the ambulance. It was shot with it. So pistol bullets poke holes. If they hit the right stuff, they'll do their damage physiologically. Psychologically, you get shot, yeah, you may still get a stop, but that's going to be dependent upon that. And they don't necessarily stop all the time instantly, even if they're hit with a good spot. If there's enough blood to the head and oxygenated blood to the head, they're going to keep functioning for X number of minutes until they decide they're not going to do that anymore. So pistol bullets just don't have any magic power to them. We're lucky if we get people to stop with them. They're the best we got, but they're not a magic wand. I don't care what load you use, what bullet you use. It's just bullet placement is going to be a big factor on it. Penetration is going to be a big factor on it. The question was asked that I want to address with those people is,
if you have a timestamp, I can put on the screen.
Gosh, let me see if I can find it again. I just looked at it and I continued to scroll. The question was basically, people should test bullets every year because manufacturers change them.
Good question.
That is an excellent question. So I'm going to give you an example. When I was doing my testing for my wad cutters, I'll use the federal HST 130 grain load, which reported was supposed to be the load for the 38SW wad cutter, or some wad cutter. I'm sorry, a wad cutter like bullet, but it's supposed to be the load. I found them to be very inconsistent. I found them to be very unreliable. In pulling bullets from different lots, I found that there was at least 3 different bullet designs in the period of 4 years where they changed the bullet shape, they changed how it was cut, where the handler was, everything about the bullet. And I took those 3 bullets to the SHOT Show, talked to the federal engineer, and I said, okay, I showed him all 3. I said, which one of these is the current bullet you guys are using? And he said, well, that one is the one we're using now, but we're discontinuing it. And when we discussed why, he said, because we could not make it consistently to work reliably. The bullet would not perform correctly. It was hard to make. It was expensive. And so we dropped that load for that reason. But there were 3 different bullets in less than 4 years that they changed on this. I have seen changes in the Spear 135 grain short barrel load. If you actually look at them, the serrations on some are longer than others, the cuts for them. So everything, all this stuff has got different things with it. Manufacturers change this stuff all the time and don't tell us that they're going to change it. And as a result of that, we see differences. One of the boutique companies, which I really respect and like, had a loadout that they claimed was 1 bullet weight. And when I actually shot the bullets and recovered them, they weren't even close to being the bullet weight they were supposed to be. And I'm not going to say who, because that issue has been fixed, but I'm guessing it's during the time of when COVID was hitting and everybody was having trouble finding everything, and these bullets were put out. Now, they performed as they were supposed to. The velocities were the same, penetration was the same, but the bullet weight was not anywhere close to where it was supposed to be. I think it was just a matter of acquisition of the proper bullets they've done, because since then I have not seen that issue. But there was a time in there where that manufacturer put out these loads and they weren't the same load as they are now.
If I remember right, Mark, that was a hard cast bullet.
It was a hard cast bullet. Yes, sir.
Well, so again, variability. If you get a difference in the alloy, when you put antimony and other things in, the lead is the heavy part. You mix other things in, it makes the bullet lighter. Well, if you get your mix a little bit off, then you think the bullet is a certain weight, but it's actually a different weight.
Yep.
So again, there's variabilities in this stuff. A lot of this is nominal.
In this particular case, the bullet design was different than what they'd previously put out and what they're putting out now. So I'm going with the benefit of the doubt that they, for whatever reason, they couldn't obtain the bullet they'd used before and put out loads to meet demand. But while they performed, they weren't the same bullet. And velocity didn't affect it, but actually penetration didn't affect that much. But bullet weight was considerably off. We're talking about 12 grains of weight difference between the bullets. So these are all variables that go into it too. So yes, you need to check your ammo, and no. Chuck and I did a test with a 2021, I think it was. We fired the first federal punch loads, and we got much shallower velocities. We've come up with maybe the gel was a little cold that day, but I think it's more that federal changed the loading and improved it to make it work well. Unfortunately, I just had, before I came out to where I am now, which is South Dakota, for a class, I did some testing, actually just some practice shooting, and I shot my federal punch 22s just to verify zero, and I had a complete dud on one of the loads. I hit the thing 7 times in different places on the round, and it never went off. And if anybody's interested, they can contact me, and I'll be happy to give them a lot number. I'm not going to put it out here. I'm going to contact Federal about it. But this is their Federal premium line. This ammunition has been stored properly. It is not exposed to a lot of heat or cold. And yet I had a complete dud with this, and I'm not happy with it, unfortunately. So sorry, Federal.
The other thing I've seen over the years is the box sub posted velocity on it, and the velocity has changed drastically.
Yep.
And not just because of a certain gun or a revolver or whatever. I mean, we're talking some drastic stuff, of course. Whatever, I don't know, Chuck mentioned it earlier about test barrels and what they're using, whatever, but they have a certain velocity. And you'll test it in, like I've tested in my guns, whatever, and I have a line of where it's shown in my guns, and then you'll wait a few years and you'll do another test for some odd reason, and it's way off in the same gun. I also know that they're sometimes the manufacturers. What's that?
Powder breaks down. If you carry it in your especially if you're carrying it like you carry in your car and you're bouncing around the roads and like you're bouncing ammunition around, the powder will break down and it will change.
No, I was talking about I'm not talking about the same ammo. I'm talking about if you buy new ammo off the shelf, the same model of ammo.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Several years difference, it'll be different. I've had them. I know manufacturers sometimes will change their powders and their loads and still not change the box information. Just like you were talking about, Mark, how they'll change the design of the wad cutter, but not say anything.
Right.
They'll change certain things within the load and not say anything. The box will still be printed the same, whatever, and
Absolutely.
there'll be some differences.
I'll throw out, switching from pistols to rifles. Back in our first big ammo crunch in 2008 to 2012, when we had the first one we had, the Federal, which I'm a big fan of Federal. I'm not trying to badmouth them, but they had some quality control issues came out. And they were running out of powder and couldn't find powder, I guess. And you would find like 308 match ammo. You'd have some that would be very little muzzle flash, and some would look like a explosion going off at the end of the barrel. Everything changed with it. The Federal Federal HST I was talking about. In one box of 20 rounds, I had 108 feet per second difference in velocity from the same gun. That one that went up to 928 feet per second, where the other were like 830. My hand stung and the round blew up in the gel and didn't even go 4 inches into the gel. It just disintegrated basically in the gel. And it's the same box of ammo. So we knew it was the same kind of bullet and should be the same velocities. But manufacturers go through their good times and bad times. Chuck and I have talked about Winchester. Winchester used to be my go-to load for everything we use. That's all we used in our department. And then Winchester had a lot of quality control issues come out that their velocities and bullets were not doing what they're supposed to do. So there's no one right answer. We have to go best what we can do. Stay with consistency with the big manufacturers, or if you got custom loads from the boutique manufacturers, to test yourself and see what they do. Contact the manufacturer, talk to them about the loads. I think those are the best we can do with it, but there's no absolutes with it. I mean, I would have never expected Federal premium punch ammo not to go bang.
That's 22, that's why.
Well, I understand that, but still.
I'm being a smartass.
I know it is, but it's a 22. I understand that. 22s are notoriously, if not stored properly, can go bad from the rimfire cartridge. But this has not been stored bad, and it's still a dead round. So I'm kind of shocked. But another manufacturer, and I'll just throw this one out, is SIG. I bought a box of 38 specials of theirs to try, and in less than 5 rounds, I had a squib.
And don't drop it either. It just goes off by itself sometimes. Actually, this kind of reinforces something I think it was Chuck that brought up, and this might be a little more agency related, but it absolutely applies to the individual, is if you have your primary ammo choice, make sure you have secondaries and secondary stuff that does what you want it to do, because we can't always have our primary choice, and maybe we might run into a point where maybe our primary choice of ammo isn't doing what we want it to do. Let's go to our secondary, primary and secondary.
I strongly advise agencies to have more than one authorized duty load.
Yeah.
Every once in a while you get supply chain issues, or you might get a bad batch. I have been, like Mark said, I used to recommend Winchester. I have carried Winchester at work. I've carried it in my personal guns. I don't carry it anymore. Past few years, their quality control has been so hit and miss, I won't do it. At an agency level, if you have a program of any size and you get a shipment of ammo in, especially your duty ammo, I think if you are not taking a sample of that ammo, test firing it out of your service pistols, running it over a chronograph, and maybe smacking a couple of rounds into a clear gel block just to make sure it actually opens up, the way you expect it to, or maybe a Fackler box with a water box, something like that, to make sure that it's meeting your design parameters that your criteria for what you need it to do. I think you're negligent. If you're a police, you're running a program and you're not quality proof testing your ammo before you hand it out to your troops, that's a problem. That's where things like having a Garmin and maybe some clear gel, run out to the range, set it up, fire 20 rounds over the top of the, down range, get your velocity check. It's meeting specs with the Garmin. Function checks through a couple of pistols, put a couple of your hollow points into a clear gel block. It does what you expect it to do. Good to go. I have seen cases of, talking about Winchester, they lost the FBI ammo contract because they sent a bunch of 147 grain bonded to the FBI. That was their official duty ammo. They didn't have flash holes in the primer pocket. So, you pop the primer, nothing happens. There's no hole for the flash to hit the gunpowder. I have tested Winchester bullets, the Ranger T's, the famous Talon type, jacket. I have seen those completely fail to expand because they let the tooling get dull and it didn't cut the skives in the jacket correctly. So now it acted like a flat nose full metal jacket with significant penetration versus a jacket hollow point. So at an agency level, I think you should do due diligence if you want to be in the role of like chief firearms instructor or range master or something like that.
Saying that, Chuck, as well as I do, majority of people, even firearms instructors, for most of the agencies around the country, are not gun guys. They are not experts in the area of ballistics, and they will go with whatever bean counter provides them. I've seen agencies who buy Phoenix PD, with an example. They bought ammo because the bean counters bought the ammo, and that's what they used. And they didn't really have an input into it. If you want to do the best justice for your people, you need to test this stuff, look at what's going on, and make sure that the ammunition you're getting once you get it tested. We had a batch. A great example is we bought a batch of 185 grain Remington 45 hollow points because that was the only hollow point load available when we went out to go with 1911s for our department, and they ran fine on my guns. They ran fine. Well, my guns were all throated and ported. We go now to put them through standard issue 1911s that were not modified in any manner, and they wouldn't work. We couldn't get them to work. So we had to scramble and take like 40,000 rounds of ammo and exchange it for ball that we could get to function in the officers' guns. And we used ball for many years until we could come up with a hollow point that would actually work. So these types of things need to be done, but there's a lot of folks out there who are not really into their ammunition and don't study what actually there. They just go with, well, what can we get? What's the cost? Let's do this hollow point and they don't do their own independent testing. They don't look at it. They don't examine it. I think if you're running it too, and Matt, you've probably seen that too.
If you're running a program and you're responsible for other people's lives, what you could do is not be a low information douchebag and actually do your job.
Silly talk.
Come on, Chuck.
Problem with expressing my feelings. I'm told I need to work on that.
Yeah. Need to work on your delivery a little bit. Oh, man, yeah.
The only thing would be better would be Chuck saying that and then he pepper sprays them.
There you go.
I could arrange that.
It's like those people that talk to somebody, they say something to them, they spray them with a water bottle. So now you got Chuck with a water bottle, but inside the water bottle is pepper spray.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bad.
Somebody asked, Chuck, are you coming to Revolver Fest? Are you going to Revolver Fest this year?
Oh, yeah, I did see that. Yes, I will be at Revolver Fest in South Carolina. Really looking forward to that.
Unfortunately, I will not be. I'm going to be on a cruise going through the Panama Canal.
We will both be at Revolver Roundup.
We will both be there, yes.
Yeah.
I'll be there. I'll be back for that one.
Well, it's been 2 hours. I think this has been a wonderful discussion. And no, I'm not just saying that. It's just fun to talk about this stuff. And some people that aren't as excited about these topics as I am, I could see some people complaining. This is all we talk about: wad cutters, revolvers, ballistics. I think when people start understanding or paying attention to what you guys are saying, we can stop rehashing the same damn topics. But we're not there yet. It's going to be a few years. So I'm sorry. This specific episode is going to be repeated about 20 more times.
We talked about autos.
Yeah. But and genuinely, I think this is such a fascinating topic, and you guys brought up some really cool topics or concepts that haven't been brought up in the past. And that's one of the cool things about these episodes is we might have an idea of this is the specific direction we want to go, and then these awesome nuggets show up. And that's how it's been since we started these. It's just nice that we're a bit more streamlined. Believe it or not, these are streamlined compared to how we started. Oh gosh, the old ones were they were people snoring.
It'd be here at 2:30. We'd be here at 2:30 in the morning.
8 hours.
I remember you saying you had your 1911 discussion. It was 8 hours.
Oh, it was 8 hours. And I think it was closer to 10. But the app we were using just cut off at 8. But the conversation was so good. It was like AJ Zito and me and Chambers and Pressburg and Dave Laubert. Who else? Yeah, just a cool group of people. But when you get people like this, to just like this panel, get this caliber of people to discuss these topics, going into the weeds is so much fun. And you see the excitement in your guys' eyes, and you hear the enthusiasm in your voice, and especially if you're just listening to these. And it's just rewarding, because how often do we get to see this? I get to see it if I go to a class with a good instructor. That doesn't happen as often as I wish as often as it should. But these are such a great opportunity for people to be able to touch professionalism and insights that we don't get to have on a regular basis. I say it all the time. I love doing these. And with that in mind, this goes out to the viewers, the listeners. Make sure you are supporting those sources that you found to be beneficial. It doesn't have to be primary and secondary. It doesn't have to be these guys. If someone's producing something that you appreciate, something that you learn from, something that helps you improve, you got to give them likes, subscriptions, and shares, period. I know I personally have used various videos that Chuck has, and some of them are on active self-protection. And then there's some other sources. And I use some of these videos in part of my police officer training, with some of my department training, de-escalation and other things like that. Right now, we have some awesome resources. We have some awesome people who we can reach out. We can contact them. We can train with them. If we want, we can call them, message them, or whatever. These people are all within reach. And we're living in a wonderful time. So I've talked in the past about how right now we have so many awesome options for firearms. And we can get into the weeds as how specific you want to get for deep cover or for deep carry or for just plain concealment or for you name it, duty, anything. So many great options. We have great options for ammo. We have great options for training. Right now, the gun industry isn't doing so hot. We're in the middle of a slump. Money's just not there. And obviously, every company is going to have QA, QC that's going to go up and down.
Yep.
We have seen this with Taurus. We've seen Taurus that was down here, and they're on their way up. We see other companies going up.
We've seen it with Colt. We've seen it with Ruger. There's not one manufacturer that had issues.
Yeah. And I have multiple 6. I started my police career with a 229 and then a 226. Man, I would love to get a 9mm 226 right now. But I still like the 320s. I don't carry them though yet. I'm a little concerned, but yeah, my agency is a Glock agency. But bottom line, we have so many awesome resources. Make sure you're supporting them. Those algorithms do not work in our favor, so make sure you're giving those shares. Make sure this episode got a like, especially if you learned anything. If anything, if you're entertained, this deserves a like. I'll probably listen to this tomorrow and probably find out figure out a couple clips. Hopefully this doesn't get booted off of YouTube. They've done that a couple times now. Facebook has done this as well. But I'm going to stop talking for a minute. I'm going to let these guys give their final thoughts, their final plugs. Again, make sure you are supporting those sources that you have found to be beneficial. Pay attention to who these guys are if you aren't familiar with them already. We've had episodes with these guys a lot. And even with the first one where we had Steve or Mark or Chuck, those first ones were outstanding. And you're going to see there are definitely common themes. But with every episode, there is just enough difference to make it so worth your while. So, Chuck, final thoughts, plugs, all that kind of stuff?
Well, if you're interested in some of this stuff, like because somebody asked, I'll be at Revolver Fest in South Carolina. That's October. Revolver Roundup, Pat Rogers Memorial Revolver Roundup, gun sight in November. I've got some other training, my pepper spray instructor, small guns classes, close quarter handgun, things like that. I am teamed up with a few other dudes. We have the Tactical Anatomy Summit. If you're interested in the tactical anatomy systems information, I'm also an AI for Doc Williams in his tactical anatomy instructor class. That'll be at Meade Hall next May in Oklahoma. I do wound ballistics demonstration and talk about this stuff in depth, and we shoot samples and show people what we're talking about in those classes. So if you're interested in that, I'm doing tactical anatomy summits, and then I help with the instructor school with Dr. Williams in his tactical anatomy systems instructor school as well. So got that coming up because you always want us to talk about what we have going on. So if you get on my Instagram or my Facebook, you can see some of the bullets that I ran into ballistic gel. I need to post a few more. Specifically, if you're interested in like the DB load that I was talking about, one of Steve's loads, that show you could instantly tell the difference between the bullets that went through the organic gel instead of just the clear gel. It made a pretty noticeable. I wouldn't say, dramatic, but it's pretty noticeable difference in the bullet expansion, that sort of thing. So tells me my theory is proving out. I'm gonna do some more testing on this, but tells me that some of what we see in clear gel on the internet isn't exactly an accurate picture of what we should expect out of reality. And then I'm going to put a plug in for Steve. Remember when I was talking about good ammo, goes bang every time, shoots accurately to your sights, easy to control out of your gun, gives sufficient penetration. He makes that ammo. Yeah, it's not like some of the boutique loaders back in the day always had the hottest ammo, the fastest ammo, barn burner ammo, things like that. Steve just makes good, reliable ammo.
Yep.
So
I agree.
Put a plug in there, and I buy his ammo with my own money. So it's what is currently sitting in my backup gun when I go to work, and my 38 snub. So wanted to throw that out there.
Good stuff. And that actually brings up a good point that I think I forgot to mention. For people that have been listening for a while, that are familiar with these topics, familiar with the speakers, they've figured out pistol terminal ballistics aren't exciting. It's not, oh, this is amazing. No, it's consistent is what it is. And it's these specific variables. And if someone is wowing you, take a step back and try to figure out what they're trying to sell you, because pistol bullets shouldn't wow you. Now, that being said, I'm gonna reinforce what Chuck said about Steve's ammo. Consistency, reasonably priced, available, gets to me quick. I'm happy with that, and that's why I'm all my revolver stuff is I've just decided, I'm going with High Desert. That's my choice for all my revolver stuff. For my semi-autos, it's different. I have all my duty stuff and all that other. But yeah, Mark.
Okay, I don't have a lot of open enrollment classes. My only one that I really have is up in Wyoming, and that's every June. You can reach me. I don't have a big social media presentation. Most of my stuff is government contract, what I'm up in South Dakota for right now, government contract stuff that I travel around to do. But I do a class up in Devil's Tower, Wyoming every year in June. Be my 32nd year up there, consistent year going up. And we do handgun, this year we do rifle, and we'll do long range rifle. So that'll be what we do for this type of class for next year. I am at Revolver Roundup. I would love to be Revolver Fest. Like I said, my wife and I already scheduled a cruise before these guys came up with the dates for that. So, they lose or I lose, one of the two. But then I'll also be at Thunderstick, which is going to be out through Van Comp. If you go to Van Comp Shotguns, they will have the information on it. You can do that. That'll be in October at Pahrump, which is the Staccato range, which used to be the front sight range, which is Prairie Fire range. But if you want to shoot shotguns, this is a great class for it. Revolver Roundup in November at Gunsight, the premier revolver event. We've got excellent instructors down there, and you learn anything you want to do about revolvers. I'm available at Mark Fricke at AFTT17 at MSN.com if you want to contact me. Because I'm kind of winding down my training career after almost 50 years of being a trainer, but I'm still liking doing it. I still love it, but that's the best way to contact me is through my website in there. So that's me. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you having me on again.
Oh, always a pleasure. And it's so much fun to give you a hard time. Steve, HDCC.
HDCC. Yeah, I've been in. Not been on here too much. People don't really know me too much yet. They're starting to. Obviously, I appreciate and I'm blessed with all of the plugs and stuff. Major people in the industry are giving me. 27 years law enforcement, been retired 10 years, and all those 10 years of retirement, I've been in the manufacturing ammunition industry. But in that, after at the turn of the century part, got associated with Doc Roberts, met him, and was doing my own ballistic testing based on being able to attend a lot of wound shot autopsies. And comparing those to ballistic testing that some of the companies were doing, like Federal and Spear and Hornady and whatever. And so comparing what I saw in the ballistic testing and then actually pulling bullets out of people, that's where it got it for me. And then from there, working with, again, another, I have these moments of just, I don't know what you call them, like working with a DB load. We worked with the TMJ load first, and he's, we got it about 935, and I've said this on their ModCast. And he wanted a defensive load to match it, and you look back, and when I was growing up in the firearms industry, the magazines, whatever, late 70s and 80s, 90s, it was all 357 has to be run at high velocity, whatever. But that was that technology from back then. And so my mind was still kind of wrapped around that, even though I had been through this stuff with Roberts and the autopsies and everything. I'm not sure why I went back there, probably because there was more of that pounded in my head over the years. But when I mixed up my block and started running up DB load through there, those XTPs, and got consistent expansion, XTP type expansion, and the consistent penetrations that I was seeing, depths, that was in a sense going against the grain. Is that no, you can't have a round that is easy to shoot, less blast, less recoil, and still performs. You can't have that. It's just not gonna be happy. I gotta mute my mic for just a minute. My wife's coming in with a dog.
So actually, I think that's a great thing that Steve just brought up. Because after I said about that's not exciting. Pistol ammo isn't exciting. There was definitely hype with the DB load.
Yes.
And it was because it's exactly what Steve just said, because that is exciting, because it's finding that balance of everything that we want and having it shootable. That's insanity.
So anyways, we went from there and expanded with the other loads, 41 Magnum, 44 Special, 44 Magnum, and others.
38 S&W.
Yeah, I'm going to get Mark, it's on the list. It's in the queue. I've got like 7 other loads in the queue, and yours is actually number 3 in the queue. So it's going to come this year. So I'm hoping by Revolver Roundup, which I'll be at Revolver Roundup down there at Gunsight, I hope to have some samples for you. I'm going to give you a present.
All right, dude. Thank you.
But working with EB and Brian with a Y and Chuck here and Mark, other people in the industry have helped develop my loads and to prove that, you know what, you can have these loads doing these things and they will perform. And it goes against the norm. And I have to admit, you no sooner you hold back the tide than trying to change people's minds. I rode horses for 20 some odd years. That's where I got my first law enforcement start, with the Forest Service, riding backcountry on the horseback. But you can lead a horse to water, not make it drink. People, you can't even lead them to the water. Snow flipping away. You're going to get them there. It's horrid. And so it's like, whatever. And I don't argue on the net anymore. It's like, this is what I'm seeing. This is what, of course, I'm not Chuck. I'm not Mark. They're more known than I am. I'm thanks to you people, I'm getting there. But I have had the last people. What's that?
You people,
yeah,
what?
Yeah. But I have had quite a few phone calls in the last year asking me about ballistics and stuff. So it's starting to move that way. But anyways, High Desert Cartridge Company, highdesertcartridge.com. I do get I work with a lot of people in the industry, and my loads are developed based on that, and they're extensively tested, not only with I want reliable, accurate, like Chuck was talking about, but I want them consistent. And that's one thing I look at. When my powder measures, most people, when they hand load, they run a powder measure out to tenths of a grain. My powder measures are calibrated to hundredths of a grain. So I can keep my consistency a little bit better. It's tough to do, to get those dialed in. It takes a little more time to do it. But with the right powder, they'll hold. But I want that. And I also want to stay small enough to where people have a question, I can call them back. I want to have the accessibility that people can get a hold of me. I don't want to get huge that big to where I can't do that. I see that time and time with companies when they start out. Their quality is X, whatever, and their customer service is X. And then as they get big, they tend to lose that. And I don't want to lose that.
Good for you.
Yeah. Now, just because it's fun to hear Chuck get angry, a question did come up just in the last minute that I think we need to just briefly address. And it's not just Chuck that I'm sure is going to say something. TJ asked, he said, I had to step away for like an hour and a half. Did anyone address the Lehigh bullets that supposedly create permanent cavity around them? And we kind of talked about that a little.
But when I use the term magic flutes,
here it goes.
When I use the term magic flutes and bullets, it was meant to be derogatory. That said, of all of those bullets that are out there, the Lehigh is probably the best one.
Yeah.
It has pretty good construction. It has a fairly wide meplat. It has kind of a sharp cutting, semi-wide cutterish face. So I look at those bullets as a modern, like in the 380, let's say, they're really useful because expansion is a negative typically out of bullets like a 380. So could it be useful in loads like that so that you have a wad cutter or a cutting effect on the med plat that guys like Elmer Keith were looking for a bullet with a flat face that penetrated sufficiently to get the job done against the target you're going up against that you need to shoot. Yeah, it could be useful. Do the flutes in the bullet cause magic pressure waves or hydrostatic shock, which isn't even a hydrostatic? Static is not moving. It's a made up bullshit term. There is no such thing as hydrostatic shock. It just doesn't exist. There's hydrodynamic things that are going on. Anyway, I'm digressing, but you have permanent cavity, you have temporary cavity. It does not create enough temporary cavity to give extra wounding. That's blatantly false. It's an outright lie. It's bullshit. Some of the other bullets, not the Lehigh, are almost a round nose in effect. And in the testing I've done, they have no more wounding effect than a ball round would have. Right. And they are certainly not better than a good jacketed hollow point. That is blatantly false advertising. So of the solid copper bullets that are non-expanding, because the expanding solid copper bullets, like the old Corbon DPX, the current, I believe it's a Barnes bullet, might not be, but like Supervel loads a 115 grain plus P9 millimeter solid copper hollow point. That's a pretty legit load. Good expansion, good penetration. It's something I can recommend. The Lehigh bullets of all those out there are the ones that I would recommend for niche use. Like their outdoors load in 9 millimeters made to have high penetration. It does just that. The 380 loads, I think, are pretty legit if they feed in your gun. And I think there's an advantage in skipping expansion out of a pocket gun like that. But like the G9 bullets, the last box I saw, shaped charge technology. A shaped charge is an explosive anti-tank device. It's made with high explosives. There are no high explosives in a pistol bullet that you buy over the counter. It just doesn't exist.
They also, what they call it, an external hollow point.
External hollow point. Yeah.
Yes. There's also no such thing as an external hollow point. It's just grooves or flutes in the bullet. And then some of the other bullets that are the copper polymer matrix, like the Ruger ARX, has the flutes. It's a very smooth round nose bullet. So because of the design, construction, and things like that, I would tell you they have less wounding potential than a ball round because of how they're built. So yeah, even in the fluted, various fluted bullets, they're not all created the same. But the idea that this enhanced temporary cavity of these bullets adds somehow to the permanent cavity, blatantly false.
Chuck, what about the honey badger from Black Hills?
That is a kind of a jaggedy face Lehigh bullet.
Yeah.
It may be Lehigh making it.
I think it is.
I believe it is. But instead of coming up and looking like a Phillips screwdriver from the top, and then from the side, it comes up and has kind of a square meplat, like a truncated cone,
right?
Almost like a semi-wad cutter, but doesn't have a shoulder. The honey badger has more. There's more. It's more jagged in the nose, so it would have more. It would have a cutting effect. That the honey badger in the smaller caliber lows, I think there's some. There's some pluses to it. You don't just have round nose ball ammo sliding through the tissue and not cutting it. So it has kind of I call it a kind of a semi-wad cutter where you have that flat face that has an enhanced crush cavity in tissue. But other than that, yeah.
I had a conversation, it was texts with Dr. Gary Roberts about fluted, and I had no idea, never thought about it. And he pointed out those flutes, it's just extra surface area. and that's what's controlling the penetration. I thought, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
It's enhanced. It's more drag.
Yeah.
It's just drag.
Yeah, and that's not wounding. It's just controlling that penetration.
Matt, one I just saw was somebody asked about laser safety slugs, and that is one that has been around for a long time. Pre-fragmented bullets do not work well. They do not penetrate deep enough. I mean, if they go in deep enough, if it's a frontal shot, it might do more damage. But if you got to shoot through anything else in between a frontal chest shot, you're probably not going to get deep enough to get any damage done to it if they expand. I know of 3 cases. An officer actually shot himself in the leg with a 38 Glaser from a Detective Special. Superficial wound in his leg, went about half an inch to an inch deep. And that was it. A lot of tissue damage on the surface, but it did not penetrate the muscle.
How thick were the jeans he was wearing?
It may have been. They were very thick denim. I don't know. Anyway, and then a female cop in Dallas shot a guy through a leather jacket with a 357 Glaser, and it did not penetrate into the skin. Stopped in the jacket, stopped on his shirt, and he had basically pellets sticking out of his skin like pimples. But that was the extent of the damage from it. So if you can get it in the body, it may do more damage, but getting it in the body is the hard part. It just doesn't get it. You just can't guarantee what kind of shots you're going to have.
357 Glaser sounds like an oxymoron.
I bought into that for a while. I did. I had, that because that was the old standard that was set up for the I can't even think of what test it was from the Justice Department, NIJ.
Relative incapacitation.
Oh, yes. The 9mm was the best load out there in the Glaser safety slug because it penetrated the least. The most damage in their little computer model, which was like 2 or 3 inches in, and that was fine. It's strange stuff. I bought into all that stuff. I bought into all this stuff that was out there. Stuff was mentioned about night class. I bought into night class. I carried night class for years when I was nerd, until I actually shot it in ordnance gel, almost like wad cutters. I'm like, no, I'm done. When it didn't work, when it didn't penetrate deep enough, if it didn't expand, which it didn't expand through any kind of a clothing, but when it expanded, it never got deep enough. I just said, you know what, I'm done. I'm just carrying wad cutters. So that's what I carry. I just carry a wad cutter load of my 38s, and I'm happy.
Yeah. Well, you must like them because you're writing a book.
I'm writing a whole book. One of these days.
I'm going to stop. I promise, Mark. No more. No more.
Well, big thank you, as per the norm, to the panel. Wonderful discussion. I think this is, again, one of those discussions. It was a good balance of entertainment. Damn, I'm funny. No. It was entertaining. Good level of information. These are my favorites. Big thanks to the panel. Big thank you to the viewer or the listener. If you're listening, there is a YouTube version. Hopefully it doesn't get taken down. If it gets taken down, I'll find a different way to put it back up. If you're watching, it is available on your favorite audio podcast, whatever app. With that in mind, we also have some sponsors to thank. We have, let's see here, a big thank you to Lucky Gunner, Philster Walther, and our Patreon network supporters, and also network supporters on the, what is it called, the forum? primaryandsecondary.com/forum. If you like what we do, make sure you're providing that support. That does include likes, shares. Feedback also is always nice. If you leave comments, that's always nice to get, as well as reviews. If you especially appreciate what we're doing, if these episodes or anything part of primary and secondary has helped improve your overall quality of life, okay, that might be a stretch. There are different avenues you can go to help support the network, and that's on Patreon, patreon.com/primary and secondary, and on the forum. I think that is, and I say this every time, I think that is pretty much everything. As of right now, I just released part 2 of the episode discussing something with pistol bullets, was it? I can tell you exactly what it is. It was Super Dave Osborne is next week, and we just recorded that last week. I just released Ammo Selection and Zeroing Part 2, just got released. That was 2 hours of discussion. This episode is 2 hours of discussion. I'm looking forward to re-listening, finding clips. There was a phrasing part about 30 minutes in that I'm definitely going to clip, and that's going to be its own little thing because I thought that was hilarious.
The phrasing part, you guys, come on.
It was you. You're the one that said it.
It was me. I was going, what? You guys went over top of my head on that one. Wow.
But yeah, that's it. We still have reloading episode and stupid big bore episode, and
I'm looking forward to that one.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
We just need to get that snipe guy who I had no idea he was a revolver fanatic. You think you know someone, Mr. Roland Special. Sweet, we're at 2 hours and 30 minutes. Not bad. I'm going to kill the feed and go to bed because I need to be up in 7 hours. So, yeah. This specific episode, I was really hoping to have it start even earlier, but work got in the way. Big shout out to E-warrants and probable cause statements.
And drunk drivers just are never considerate to people's schedules.
They are so inconsiderate. Cool. Well, talk to you guys later.
All right. Good night.
Yep.